Alright, what's up guys? Welcome back to the vlog. Today we're going to be recapping a San Diego poker trip I took last week with a few friends. So during this trip we made 3 stops. It was a 2-day trip. Stop number 1 was 7 Mile. Second was Hamul Casino, which is a new property. And third was Barona. So there's quite a few hands to go over. Let's jump right in, starting at 7 Mile. Alright, so in the first hand, there is 2 limpers ahead of me, and the player on my direct right makes it $18 to go. I look down at pocket 7s and make the call. The 2 limpers also make the call. So we go 4 ways to a flop, which comes 7, 6, 3 with 2 clubs. It checks to the original raiser, and he puts out a c-bet of $45. So in a heads up pot, I don't mind making the smooth call with top set, but seeing as there's 2 players left to act and there are a lot of draws available, I think I have to put in the raise and deny equity from players behind me. So I make it 110 to go, and unfortunately everyone folds. In the second hand, we look down at ace deuce of spades in the big blind. There's 5 limpers and I check. The flop comes 7, 5 deuce with 1 spade. So we check and it checks around. The turn is the 9 of spades, giving us the nut flush draw. When it checks around to the button, he puts out a bet of $15 and I make the call, everyone else folds. The turn is the jack of spades and we make the nuts. So as I'm assembling a bet, he actually bets out of turn. So oftentimes this will be a bit of an angle shoot from your opponent to make you not bet, and that way when you do check, he can just check behind. But this man was an elderly gentleman, and I did not see that sort of play in his arsenal. Maybe a bit naive of me, but I decided to check and let his action stand. So when he gets the option, he can actually check back, but he doesn't. He does put out the bet. It was just a misunderstanding. And now I elect to obviously raise with the nuts. I make it $60 and he reluctantly makes the call. So we scoop that pot. So in the third hand, I open to $20 over 2 limpers with pocket 10s. The big blind is the only caller and he is the gentleman from the previous hand. We go heads up to a flop, which comes ace king 3 rainbow, and although this is not a great flop for my actual hand, it is a good flop for my perceived range. So he checks and I put out a c-bet of $25 and he makes the call. So we go off to a turn card, which comes an offsuit deuce. I still think that whatever hand he has cannot withstand too much pressure. So when he checks it over to me, I choose to continue to tell my story and put out a bet for $65, and he folds king jack face up. So that one worked out and we scoop another one. I had been sort of making mental notes of the players at my table, and there was only one player in particular who I thought was trouble to get in hands with. He seemed really solid. In this hand, I opened ace queen offsuit to $20 from under the gun, and he is the only caller in the small blind. Heads up to a flop, which comes queen 6 3 rainbow. He checks and I put out a standard c-bet of $20 and he makes the call. We're off to a turn card, which is an offsuit 7, completing the rainbow on board. He checks again. I continue for $65 and he makes the call. So we're off to a river, which is an offsuit deuce. He checks, and I think at this point he might actually have a queen himself. I think this is where I make a mistake with my sizing. He has about $250 behind. I elect to go all in, and he goes in the tank and shows me king queen before making the fold. I'm not sure if it's a huge mistake. My sizing, I think it's mostly fine, but against a thinking player, I don't want to give him a good reason to fold, and maybe a smaller sizing on the river is a better idea. In the next hand, I look down at king queen offsuit from the button, and I elect to raise behind two limpers to $25. They both make the call, as well as the big blind. So we go 4 ways to a flop of 8-8-6 rainbow. It checks to me, and I think I make a mistake here. Against 1 or 2 players, putting out a c-bet into such a dry flop I think is fine. But against 4 players, I'm not sure I like it. It seems a little too strong, and I don't know if it works enough to be profitable long term. But as played, I put out a c-bet for $45. No need to size too big here, and they all make the call. So I'm pretty much done with the hand, and paired with the fact that the turn is now a 10, I'm definitely done with the hand. It checks to me, and I happily check back here. There's a ton of 9-7, slow played 8s, even slow played pocket 6s. There's a bunch of draws that will continue, and I just don't like double barreling into 3 opponents. So I check back, and now the river is a 3. So the big blind puts out a bet for $120, and one of the limpers makes the call. I just make the easy laydown and move on to the next hand. All right, and the last hand we play here at 7 Mile, I look down at pocket kings from the small blind. So there's 2 limpers, and now there is a raise in middle position to $20. It folds to me. I put in the 3-bet to 75, folds back to the raiser, and he jams all in for around 250. I quickly make the call, and he shows ace-king suited. The flop comes all low cards. Unfortunately, the turn is an ace, and we cannot hit our 1 out on the river. So that was the last hand we played at 7 Mile. A bit of a bummer to end with that one, but nonetheless, we book a small win and move on to the next session. All right, so the next day we made our way to Hamul Casino, which, like I said, is a new property, and it was really nice. The poker room is fairly dead still because this place opened not too long ago, and the poker room had its grand opening this month. So when we got there at around 11 a.m., there were no games running, just a tournament, and my friends and I actually opened the first 1-3 game of the day. Luckily, it filled up pretty soon, and we were able to get some interesting hands in there. In the first hand, we're short-handed. I think we're 5 players in right now, and there's a pretty active girl in the 9 seat who had been giving a lot of action and was happy to announce that she was just there to gamble. So we opened pocket 5s from under the gun. I made it 20 to go, by the way, and she makes the call from the straddle. So we go heads up to a flop, which comes 5, 6, 8 with 2 clubs. So we flop bottom set on a fairly connected board. She checks it over to us, and I put out a c-bet. I make it $40 to go. Definitely want to size up here on such a wet board. She quickly makes the call, and we go off to a turn card, which is Queen of Clubs, completing the flush. So she checks, and I'm not sure if I want to put out a bet here. It would really suck to phase a check raise. And being that we're both around 300 effective, she definitely still has enough to get me off the hand, even with some semi-bluffs. So I elect to check back, and we go off to a river. The river is a 4 of spades, also not my favorite card, and now she leads out for $65. So seeing as my hand is very under-repped by checking back the turn, I don't think I can fold here on this river bet. I definitely don't expect to win all of the time, but I don't think folding is the right play. So that just leaves one option. I make the call and she announces 2 pair. So we scoop the first pot at this new casino. All right, in the next hand, we look down at ace 10 offsuit from under the gun. In a 9-handed cash game, I think this is a pretty standard fold, but seeing as we're still short-handed, I like to open it up and I make it 20 to go. It folds to the straddle, who is the same player from the previous hand, and she puts in the call. So we go heads up to a flop of ace 9-3, all diamonds. On this flop, she elects to lead into me for $35, and I happily make the call. The turn is the 6 of hearts, and she now leads for $75. Pretty strange spot. I'm not sure what she's representing here. It seems like she could be leading with a lot of semi-bluffs, as well as made hands that don't want to see another diamond go off. After tanking for quite some time, I decided to make the fold, and looking back at my notes now, I don't know if I like that play. I think I should be continuing here and evaluating rivers, but as played, I made the fold and we move on to the next hand. All right, so the last hand we played was definitely a special one. We're in the small blind with ace queen of diamonds and the button straddle is on. So under the gun limps, middle position limps, the cutoff limps, and now it's on me. I like to raise to $50 and only the under the gun limper makes the call. So we go heads up to a flop of ace of clubs, king of diamonds, jack of diamonds. Definitely a good flop. We have top pair with a great kicker. We have the nut flush draw and obviously a royal flush draw. So I like to check, having the board so dominated. I think I want to let him catch up a little bit, and he checks back. The turn comes, the best turn in the deck.
All I wanted was you. All I wanted was you.
It's the 10 of diamonds. We make a royal flush, and we are just praying that our opponent has something he can continue with here. I bet small, $30, and luckily he makes the call, crossing our fingers for a brick river that doesn't kill any action like an ace or a 4th diamond. And luckily it comes an offsuit low card. Now on this card, I lead out for $100. He has about $350 in his stack, and he goes pretty deep into the tank. I just sit there hoping that he makes the call so I can say royal flush for the first time ever. And after a few minutes, he does not call. He goes all in. We snap call and show the royal, and we managed to book the first royal on the vlog. Not sure if there will be a second, but we got it in, and that actually turns out to be the first royal flush ever hit at Hamul Casino. They didn't have any promotion for it, unfortunately, but still awesome to get that. And here is a photo of the aftermath. That session was short but sweet for sure, and we decided to rack up after that and head over to Barona Casino, see if we could hit a few royals over there. Just a standard San Diego trip so far. right, so we arrive at Verona and get on the board for 1-2 and 1-3. Our 1-2 seat opens up first, and we sit down in that game. The first orbit, we get dealt 8-6 of diamonds in middle position. I make a standard open of $10. The player in my immediate left makes the call, and now the button goes all in for $21 total. So I put in the extra 11, and the player on my left does as well. So we're going heads up to a dry side pot, and now the board comes 7 deuce deuce with 2 spades. I like to check, and I think I should be putting out a c-bet here, seeing as how I have no showdown value with 8 high. I think that was a mistake, but I check and he checks back. The turn is a 6, bringing the second flush draw, and now I bet $35 and he makes the call. I'm pretty sure he has a variety of draws on this turn card, so my plan is to check most rivers and induce bluffs from him that I can happily call off. So the river is a 3 of diamonds, which is a great card. It does not affect our showdown value, and also all of the draws miss. So I check it over as planned, and he assembles a bet of $35. I'm holding 3 red chips in my hand at this point, and as soon as he slides the $35 across the line, I toss in my 15 bucks, indicating a call. And as soon as I do this, he grabs his $35 and slides them back towards his stack and says, "Sorry, I thought you checked." So what's going on here is he's indicating that his bet is not live, and I threw in 3 red chips as a bet, and he still has yet to act. When in reality, I checked it over to him and he put out the bet. So obviously he's bluffing and trying to take it back. A sort of scandal ensues, and the dealer tells him he has to pay me. So eventually he's forced to keep his bet out there, and he shows the king high flush draw. Our plan works out, we show the 6, and we're good. So we collect that pot. Now we get moved to the 1-3 game, and the first hand we're dealt, we look down at king deuce of spades in the big blind. Folds to the cutoff, who opens for $13, and I defend. We go heads up to a flop, which comes king queen 5 rainbow. I check, and he puts out a c-bet of 15. I make the call, and we go off to a turn, which is a 6. I check, and now he checks back. The river is another 6, so I elect to lead out for value, though I'm not expecting to be called very often here. And I make it $20. He quickly makes the fold. Alright, in the next hand, we look down at pocket 10s on the button, and it folds all the way around to us, unfortunately. However, we open at $10, and now the small blind 3 bets to $45. After the big blind folds, it's back on us, and the small blind's actually a friend of mine who came with on the trip. Very good player, very aggressive, very capable of putting you in tough spots, and he often makes his opponents make mistakes. So he's very capable of 3-betting light here, knowing that it folded around to my button and my range is fairly wide when I open. This makes me want to put in a 4-bet with pocket 10s. However, seeing as we're around 400 or 500 effective and I'm in position, this makes me just want to flat, since I don't want to face a 5-bet jam with a hand like pocket 10s. I elect to call, and we go heads up to a flop of 6-3 deuce with 2 hearts. He continues for $65, and disclaimer, this is not how you should play this spot. By default, it's a call, but I like to shove all in. I'm just trying to end the hand. He's a better player than I am, and the sooner this shit's over, the better. I probably make the weakest all-in shove of my life because it's not for value, it's just for being too much of a pussy to continue, if I'm honest. So he goes in the tank for a bit and then lets it go. I miss out on potential value, but I also miss out on getting outplayed later on, so I'm happy to take it. You gotta know when to pick your battles, you know? In the next hand, we open pocket 5s under the gun to $15, and only the small blind makes the call. He had been very gambly and had been drinking quite a bit up to this point. Happy to share with the table that he's just here to have fun. So when he makes the call, I'm just hoping to take these pocket fives to war, and it's gonna be pretty tough to get me off my hand. So when the flop comes Jack 9-3, he checks and I happily check back. Now the turn is a jack and he leads for $20. So in this spot, if he had a jack on the flop and checked it to me, I check back, and now the turn is a blank, I definitely expect him to lead. However, with the jack pairing on the turn, it's so much less likely that he has a jack, and would he really be betting a 9 for value in this spot? I don't think so. So when he bets 20, I decide that I can't let it go just yet. I make the call, and now the river is a 4. Pretty good card, doesn't change much. Now he leads out for $80. Interesting spot. Definitely a polarized bet here, because I don't think he would be betting anything that has showdown value in this position, aside from obviously trip jacks or a full house. All other hands, I expect him to check call, and so he's representing a really thin range here. I think I want to make the call. I want to see what's going on here, so that's what I decide to do, and he shows king queen. We take that one down with the hero call and move on to the next hand. All right, so in this next hand, the same player limps and I isolate with ace king of diamonds from middle position. I make it 20 to go. Everyone folds except him. He makes the call and we go heads up to a flop of king jack 6 with 1 diamond. So he checks it to me, and seeing as he's definitely not in the folding mood at this point and he's kind of getting tired of me, I've been picking on him a little bit here and there. I think if he has any piece of this board whatsoever, queen 10, jack X, king X, even a small pocket pair that doesn't believe, I just think he's gonna go with it. So when he checks it to me, I just go for the max, I rip it all in, hoping it'll look like a bluff to him, and he says, fuck it, and makes the call. Turn and river break out, and I show my hand. He shows a king, surprisingly, and mucks his other card. Happy to scoop that pot, and moving on to the last hand I played here. Alright, so in this last hand, there's an under the gun limp, and now under the gun 1 makes it $15 to go. It folds around to me on the button, and I have king 10 offsuit. I decide to just make the call, and we go 3 ways to a flop after the limper makes the call. The flop comes 10 of spades, 9 of spades, 3 of diamonds. Under the gun checks, and now under the gun 1 puts out a c-bet for $35. I have top pair, decent kicker, definitely not going anywhere. I make the call, and now the limper also makes the call. So we're still 3 ways to a turn, which comes an offsuit 5. The limper checks, and I expect the under the gun 1 player to check a huge part of his range given how the action's playing, but he does not do that. He continues for 140, and now the action's back on me. In under the gun 1's position, he is representing an extremely strong range with a c-bet on the flop, 2 callers, and then continuing on the turn for a fairly large sizing. I definitely don't like my king 10 at this point. I don't know what he could be doing this with that we're still ahead of, and after thinking about it for quite some time, I just didn't feel like I was ahead, and I still had the under the gun player left to act. I'm not sure if this is the right move, but I reluctantly fold, and now under the gun goes all in for effective $250. The under the gun 1 player quickly makes the call, and the river comes a 7, not completing the flush. Under the gun shows ace 5 of spades for a pair and a nut flush draw that bricked out, and now under the gun 1 shows king jack of spades. So we got owned in that hand, and I'm not sure if I like his turn bet there, not because it got us off our 10, but I just don't think it's profitable long term to be betting the second nut flush draw into 2 opponents after getting called on the flop. So anyway, that one does not work out. We obviously don't scoop that pot, and we could have had a fairly big ending to that session. That wrapped up the trip. Those were the most interesting hands from the 3 poker rooms I visited. We managed to book a win for the entire trip of $966. So definitely not bad for a 2-day trip of 1-3 games. I hope you guys enjoy the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys in the upcoming vlogs. Peace.
Yeah, in the front row, kicking back old school tracks like damn. Can't get enough of this, more like I don't need